We still got to be the church, no matter where we are. Whether we are in the city, whether we are in a town, like Pofada or maybe Three Sisters, we still have to be a witness. And Matthew chapter 16, verse 18, we all know that verse. We've heard it before, and we're just going to touch on it. Just be the church, and that's what I want to just briefly talk about here this morning. Be the church. Are we the church? Are we living out the witness of the Lord wherever we go? And 16 verse 18 says, "And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it," will not overcome it. NIV says, will not prevail against it. Now there's a play on words here. Because Peter's name Petros means little stone. I don't know if you know that. Little stone. He wasn't the founder of the church, and he certainly was not the first pope. He was a Christian, a little Christ, a follower of Jesus, a little stone cut from the rock, the solid rock, Christ. Petra. He was only a chip of the block. And despite being a chip of the block, the chip of the block made a difference. And even if you were just a chip of the block this morning, you can still make a difference. There are simply far too many Christians out there who have this mistaken belief that church is just something that you go to for an hour or an hour and a half on a Sunday morning. Isn't it true? The truth is you don't go to church. You are the church, as we always hear. You are the church. So wherever you go, you are that witness. You're supposed to make that impact as the church. His body. The body of Christ. So that's why we say this here to this morning. Be the church. Now is the time for the church to shine. Now is the time for the church to rise. Jesus owns the church, but he has given us an option to join him in ownership as joint heirs with him. And when we talk about him being with him as joint heirs, it's not about leadership. It's about servanthood and responsibility. Did you hear that? That's what the church is all about. Servanthood and responsibility. Do you have a servant heart this morning? Are you there to serve for him and serve others in order for them to experience his touch and his purposes for their lives? Do all you can to be a key contributor, not a spectator. That's what church is when we are the church. We do all that we can to be a key contributor, not a spectator. You got to play your role, brother. If you're a church, you got to play your role in society. Do your part, but in a way that shapes eternity, in a way that impacts eternity, in a way that influences eternity, in a way that makes a difference. Now there was a lady called Phoebe in the Bible, in Romans 16:12. She was a real servant. She was not playing church. She was a servant of the church of Cenchreae, as you would call it. That's a difficult name there. Cenchreae. You can read about that in Romans 16:1-2. She was not waiting for someone to ask her to do something. She did not just sit in church every Sunday. She knew she was saved. To do what? To serve. Are you the church this morning? Are you saved to serve, or what are you doing? Are you waiting for others to serve you? With this sense of entitlement, I should be served. You are saved to serve. None of us should be content and satisfied with the status quo, some would say, status quo, and just remain the same. Year in and year out, I'm the same. Blame the same situation, point fingers to the same situation, making the same excuses, trying to justify why I'm doing so. I just remain the same year in and year out. That's not the church. You know, it's like they say, you know the story of the definition of insanity. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over, but expecting different results. That's insane. I'm doing the same thing. I'm complaining. I'm doing this. I'm pointing fingers. I'm justifying. I'm not doing anything about it. But I expect a difference. I've got to be the solution. Just be the solution at all times. And not the issue or the problem and so forth. That was Phoebe, none of us should be satisfied. We must target higher ground. And I'm almost through. And go forward. Me to say, my target is to go higher and higher in the Lord. Or else we're going to go backward. We are not called to be keepers. I know you've heard this statement before, and I just want to mention it. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. We are not called to be keepers of the aquarium, but fishers of men. Some people just want to watch the keepers of the aquarium. We are here to be fishers of men. We are there to reach out as the church, to be the church wherever we find ourselves. Take personal responsibility to step up and be the church that makes an impact in any environment, any situation you find yourself in. Be the church. I ask you this morning, what has God done lately through your obedience? What has He done lately? Because you've been obedient. What has He done this year? Because you were obedient. You didn't wait for anybody else. You were obedient. That's what it's all about. Obedience. And because of your obedience, families' lives have been changed this year. Because of your obedience, personal friends, their eyes have opened up. Because of your obedience, people have been blessed. Things happened because of your obedience. That's all the Lord wants us to do. He wants us to be the church in every situation. Now, the question we need to answer, and then we're going to close, is what kind of church would our church be if every member were just like me? Would you like to be like me? The way I am? What kind of church should our church be if every member were just like me? Would anyone listen, or would they just look at their phone? Would we have to cancel services even for the slightest excuse or headache? Are you willing to sacrifice sleep for your God and His church? People don't make sacrifices anymore. The church. Are you willing to make sacrifices? Or are you sleeping in church rather than sacrificing sleep? Maybe you're sleeping in church every week. How often do you see a job and you just do it? Sometimes we see something and we say, no, let's leave it that someone else. And we ask someone else to do it. And we've seen it. How often do you see a need and you don't do anything about it? The church goes and does something. A church is alive and vibrant. You're not going to sit back and just leave it. If a job needs to be done, do it. Take the initiative without saying a word and saying, I've done this and I've done that. Without saying a word. Seriously now, what would our church be like if everyone were a carbon copy or a clone of you? What would our church be like? Would it be embarrassing? Would the atmosphere be uplifting or depressing? Would it be an encouraging place? or full of cold shoulders and insults? I can go on, and I want us to stop there, but I want us to answer that question. What kind of church would our church be if every member were just like you? Together, let's be the church. Together, let's take responsibility and make a difference.